think it was your brother, David, said that he...
If you unmute your microphone, that would be helpful.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Glad you're here. It's Michael Scaling. I want to introduce Elaine Jones. She's done similar work to what we're heading, the route we're heading down. And, oh, welcome here. We've got a couple more. Pull in over here if you'd like, or wherever. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or if you sit there, I can give you those packets. It's up to you.
This is great for the presentation.
Sure. Here, you can share that one. Yeah.
So, as I was saying, we discovered Elaine and Burnt Island Light through a couple of, your brother, David Conover, said he thought he had met you on the light of this summer sometime, and he said you ought to check out Elaine and the work they've done. Then I got in touch with Elaine. We started having some discussions and really realized we had a lot of similarities, only they've completed their upgrade for the next 200 years.
Right, exactly.
And we're really just getting started. So anyway, I want to welcome Elaine, and I think she's going to just start talking about what she's done, their history. Hi, Tom. How you approached it. I gave her some questions all around, not so much all the detail on which nails they used, although they've provided us that, and a lot of insights, but also how they formed, how they partnered with the owner, which is the Department of Marine Resources, where our owner is the town of Camden. And so she has lots that she can help us with and has some handouts, and this is going to be recorded so you can also go back and look at it for any other detail. So with that,
Okay,
so glad
thank you.
you're here. Thanks.
All right, so first I'll give you a little bit about my roots. I'm a Mainer through and through. Even though I did leave for college for 4 years, I did come back. I was born and raised in Auburn, Maine, Lewiston, Auburn, and was a biology major, as well as I did educational courses so that when I got out of school, I taught school for 8 years in the public school system and stayed home with kids for 8 years, 3 kids, and 8 years of them at home. And then I took on this job with the Department of Marine Resources as their education director. I had interned with them during the summers while I was in college and 2 years while I was teaching, so I was very familiar with, the staffing that were there. And when this position opened up, they actually contacted me and said, would you please consider applying? So I did. And so 30 years of working with state government. I did retire in 2020. The project of the restoration was completed that year. 2021 was the bicentennial, so had that celebration then. After I retired, I did join the nonprofit group called Keepers of the Burnt Island Light, and I was instrumental in forming that organization. I work for state government. I know that they're always looking for pockets of money that are hidden in little places, and in order to protect that money that was coming in for Burnt Island, the nonprofit then started to be the main group that was actually doing the fundraising. And you'll also find that people say, oh, I pay my taxes, so why do I want to give to a state property? Or I pay my taxes to the town of Camden, why do I want to give any more money? It's got to be earmarked and it's got to be dedicated. And that's why if you form a nonprofit for that purpose, then they feel much more comfortable giving, knowing it's secure and it's going to go towards the project that you're asking. So I'll get into that. I'm going to quickly go through the restoration because she wants to get upstairs and do another program up there. This report was sent to you and you all have it. I was hoping to give you a printed copy, but just didn't work out. I only had a few left in my folder, but it gives you, and what I did instead is I took all of the pages and I transferred them over to a PowerPoint, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because you have it to read. And when you get to this point, just call me back. And I will do a more, or when you're ready to try to do a proposal or find out what the needs are for Curtis Island Light, I'll be back to help you with that. So again, further ado, let's just look at some of these. This picture here was like my best photo that was sent out to all the donors partway through the restoration to reassure them things were going forward. And here you can see the siding's been removed. You can see the windows are off from the lantern room. The shed's being stripped of its paint off the old shingles. And so you really see a lot of action taking place. So I'm not going to go through my abstract. You have that. I did extensive research, the history of Burn Island Light, so that I had to pick a period of restoration. And I had to prove that I was restoring according to that time. And so and I'll show you my sources where I've been, but I had to submit a proposal to the State Historic Preservation Officer to get their approval. So I chose a period of 1950. Here are some of the earlier pictures here at the top. That's a very popular, right after the wooden structure was built, by the way. Burn Island also had a masonry house, just like Curtis Island had. And Burn Island was 1821 and you're 1836. Is that it for the year? I think, something around there. And so the constructions were pretty similar. And so I utilized that picture to say this is probably what Burn Island's house looked like as well. The bottom pictures are where I found my best information was in the Coast Guard Civil Engineering Unit in Providence, Rhode Island. And that's where you see they came in 1950 because the calendar on the wall said August 1950. And they took all internal photographs as well as architectural drawings of the whole house. Not only here we see the frontal view, but they did a back view, they did floor plans, so I could see exactly how it was constructed. Again, more of those photos and architectural drawings show you right there. I've got all angles of 1950, and you can see those internal pictures of the kitchen and the dining room. I even got that Queen Atlantic cook stove back by going to Thorndike. I think they're closed now, Bryant Stove Works. But my best source of information were those people at the bottom. Those were the Muses. The Muses lived there from 1936 to 51. And they actually gave me back all their furnishings that they still had. So those table and chairs and high chair and everything that was there came back to Burn Island. Historic documentation in the 1950s, so I could show all the features that existed. One keeper's wife had this photo that I needed so desperately of what did those windows look like that in 1950 and how were they framed out. And there she took a picture of her little boy sitting there, which was like, yes, Betsy, Stuart did the job for me. Starting the restorations in Island, as you have the island factor. So you gotta barge everything ashore. We're a mile off from Booth Bay Harbor. We're in the inner harbor, but everything had to be brought on and brought off by barge. You can see the middle picture, they're beginning to set up the scaffolding all around the lighthouse. And at the bottom, they're removing 1.5 inches of all of the old mortar. It had been repointed once, but once they got a little deeper than 1.5 inches, you saw that first mortar back to 1821, which was a totally different color than the Portland cement product that was in there. So all those rocks, all those granite blocks, which by the way came from the island, it was called rubble stone is the construction. It was from the cellar hole that they didn't bring their own materials, they harvested from the island and then built the house on top of the cellar hole. Now, really good pictures that sell this to the public. You can see the old mortar and the new mortar, but look at that picture at the bottom. The rubble stone is falling, chunks of it. In between, they used to just stuff between the granite blocks, they would stuff rubble stone in there. And so when you can show people horrible pictures like that, their wallets seem to open up quicker. They had to apply a new stucco, but this was a breathable product and not the thorough seal product that the Coast Guard put on there as their last coatings. And a mineral wash ended up being applied after the stucco. Here's that window installation, okay? Having to make sure that they were all, and I don't know what you have for windows in yours, but ours were those glass block, tile kind of windows. And so they all came out and we put in the traditional window that was there. So that was all rebuilt. The lantern restoration just was horrible. The rust on that lantern room was so pitted, and the astragals that hold the windows in place were all rusted. So they tried this sponge blasting, which is what this procedure is going on here, to try to remove some of that rust. And again, when it's a historic structure, you can't use sand. We used walnut shells on the inside to take off lead paint. So you can't be sandblasting things. You've got to use other mediums that they approve of. A treatment was done to try to hopefully stop that rust from further, but look at the top of the lantern room before and after. And look at the rust that was on that surface of the roof there. All the windows came out. We had four or five, I think it's five, real panes of glass, red glass. And then when that broke, they put plexiglass in. So we left the ones that were real so that we didn't have that chance. We had two of them cracked, but they did epoxy them to try to save those red glass windows, because what goes on is plexiglass, and that crazes over time, and it looks like crap. So, but you can see the windows that were taken out there of the lantern room, and the inside was all painted. We have what are called white sectors, so it's all red with two white sectors. Those are the fairways. Those are the safe zones to guide into Booth Bay. The staircase was all treated and scraped and wire brushed and painted, as well as we have the three alcoves there where the whale oil was once stored. Our staircase was once built into the wall, so they were repairing the staircase there. So all that was done. The dwelling, they peeled off all of the clapboards to find the old board and batten siding that was once there, which is the brown siding that you can see here. The battens are gone, but the boards were still there. Most of them were in good shape, so they put on this new product, which was kind of cool, Hydro Gap, which has, you can see the little, you probably are familiar with that, aren't you? I had never seen it. It's like cedar breather.
It's a drainage plane. It's a building paper with a drainage plane to allow the moisture between the clapboards or the siding to
Exit.
exit.
Yeah,
Great product.
yeah. So that was
Favorites.
good. That was very cool too. I got to see that. Windows, every single window in that house, the tower, all were replaced, and the shed as well. This was, and I know Michael remarked that you were able to use Marvin windows. I tried wooden windows, okay? When I started a semi-restoration, just the kitchen first. And after 15 years, they were rotting because there's just so much moisture out there. And so I showed that to them, and he said, this will pass. This historic preservation will accept this Marvin window. And I did get them at cost from Marvin. I got the Marvin rep to come out to Burn Island, and I kind of twisted his arm and said, come on, how can you help us? So we got them at cost, which was a big deal. Again, here's some of the siding. Always know things, you know probably when you get into an old building, surprise! A lot of other things pop up. We had rotted sills, rotted siding next to the doorway there when they had no overhangs, so there was no drippage, the drippage of waters just deteriorated things over time. So things were replaced, and here the whole covered walkway, which was a 40-foot long passageway, all the sills had to be replaced. All that wooden flooring, plank by plank, was all removed and numbered, and then ended up rebuilding. You can see the new sills on the bottom there, and then re-putting every single board back where it was. We did find some surprises too. We had a little note from a guy from at the top there. In 1937, he wrote us a note, and then we found a coin that went back to 18, I can't remember the date. See how long it's been? What was the coin? 68. Okay, so that was pretty cool. Here, exterior painting was done. Paint colors, there are federal colors chips that you can, Sherwin-Williams carries, that have all the federal colors. So I could find an old sample, a board, you can see, we have some gray, we have some white, we have some green, okay? And so I could bring that to Sherwin-Williams and they were able to match up what the color gray was. Another surprise was the roof. I did replace that roof in 2002, 2003. The contractor used stainless steels in some places for nails, and other places used galvanized. So guess what happened? The galvanized rusted out. And so we had to replace all of the roofs, and that was, again, unexpected. We did use, is it 5/4, very thick yellow cedar shingles, and that was what was there in 1950, was white pine shingles, but that was where what was on the house was wooden roofs. Here the shed is being done, again, windows being replaced. The boathouse and the coal bunker all replaced with roofs. There's the project summary. You can see how beautiful the place looks now with that top photograph of all the, and it has grayed out. It's no longer a brown roof, it's a gray roof. But every single building shines now. So there's a few before and after photographs that a picture says 1,000 words, right? You see what's happened from one point to the other. And also, if you don't have great aerial pictures, there are so many people with drones, and this is a good one to sell. Okay, so the photographer gave us the rights to sell these pictures as a fundraiser. So you will sell 1 million of those to your tourists here in Hamden in the summertime. And that's it for my slideshow. You are able to exit.
Everyone should unmute their microphone when they have a comment to make so that everybody can hear you on YouTube. And I'll be back.
Okay.
Good.
And I'm going to shut this down the best way I can. I'm looking for the,
I'm gonna just turn the power off on the TV. You can
sure.
just close it.
I'll just close it. Okay, perfect. All right, any questions for me briefly on that? But this is not what I want to spend my time with you. I want to spend my time guiding you in other ways. But any quick questions about the restoration? Where did I get my money? Right. Not a penny of taxpayers' dollars went into almost a $500,000 restoration project. Not a penny. So let's first, I sent you all a little packet of, I can share with those folks over here. So you want to own a lighthouse? Is the first question. I don't know if the two may want to share. Yeah. So you want to own a lighthouse. So what were my problems? My problems, no septic, no water, no heat, leaking roof, asbestos, lead paint, public access, was no public access, just the boat slip, meeting historic standards, and I knew it was going to cost megabucks. Those were my problems.
I think those are our problems.
Okay. So planning, all right? Planning is so important. Assessment, I got contractors out there so that, please tell me everything that's wrong, okay? So that I know what my projects and how I'm going to start asking for money. So assessment, important to get contractors out to do every assessment you can imagine. I had, I had a wastewater guy, I had an electrician, I had a plumber, I had, a regular general contractor. So they all came out and did the inspections and gave me a report. Do your research. Okay, the next page, we'll jump into that. Extensive research, the second one. So, conduct extensive research. Where did I go? Well, I started with the Coast Guard because obviously they were the new stewards of lighthouses. I found several places I found good information. One was the Coast Guard historian in Washington, D.C. Had a lot of files, but he was confused because there were 3 Burnts in Maine. There's Burnt Island, there's Burnt Coat, and there's Burnt Island Life Saving Station. And so all 3 files were all mixed up. So I gave him an hour of my time to sort his files out, so he had them all in order. But he did have some good photos. I brought a scanner with me. so that I could scan all of the photographs and documents. Didn't have digital cameras like we have today on our phones, okay, in those days when I started this research. So that's the best I could do. Besides Washington, D.C., the next one down, the National Archives. Besides a historian, I went to the D.C. archives. There, oh my God, I had so much fun. All of the log books were there from 1868 to 1939.
All of the what books?
Log books, the keeper's log books. So I got exact information when they put a new roof on, when the covered walkway was built, when this happened. Everything was exact dates. They do have annual reports every year that was done by the U.S. Lighthouse Service, and they will tell you some of the things that occurred. But by reading the log books, March 22nd, 1877, this happened, okay, which was great.
How hard was it to find that information? Like, it was very easily, readily available?
Yep, so it's called the Records of 26 is the group of records for lighthouses, and you call in advance, and you say, and a lot of it's listed online now, which wasn't before. So you can say, this is what I'm looking for, and when you get there, they have it all pulled for you, okay? So, because you don't want to waste your time. Brought a tape recorder. So I couldn't copy those, because back then, I couldn't take a picture with my camera, okay? So I couldn't copy all that, but I could sit there and read for 3 days, and that's what I did until I got all the information and then came home and transcribed it. There is Waltham, Massachusetts, has also a National Archives, it's the Northeast Archives. And College Park, Maryland is actually a cartographic branch. So they have more like illustrations and those kinds of drawings, site plans, et cetera, like that. Back to the Coast Guard, besides going to the district headquarters in Boston and Portland, where I really found like my pot of gold was the civil engineering unit in Providence, Rhode Island. They too had photographs and plans, and that was a gold mine when I went there. They're actually in Warwick, Rhode Island, but they say they're Providence. I guess that's nearby. And your local aids to navigation, are you guys under Southwest Harbor or are you under Portland? I think you're under Southwest Harbor.
I think so, yeah.
That maintains your light. So they would have records there in Southwest Harbor. Historic groups, the State Historic Preservation Officer, which is, we refer to the person as the officer as SHPO, State Historic Preservation Officer. He's in the Office of Maine Historic Preservation Commission. Everything has to be approved by SHPO. It is historic, it's on the National Register. You just can't go willy-nilly. You have to show proof. They do have some files. They have asked me to help them with their files because I have gone to all these places and I brought home more than Burn Island, but I know where the stuff is. And our local historical society in Booth Bay Harbor actually had some good stuff too. So I would refer to that. Also, I've come down here to Rockland to read the old Courier Gazettes. There was Guardians of the Coast or something to that effect on microfilm. And there was every newspaper that went out, there was an article that keepers submitted to be posted in there. And so you get some good information and who the keepers were and what was going on there. Let's see, former keepers, and I didn't get a chance to go back to look if this site was still active, but Fred's Place, this is where Coast Guard buddies are looking for their lost shipmates. And so I would post looking for Burn Island keepers. I found 14 of mine still alive when I started this process. I have 6 alive now. But those keepers provided me with their stories. I have oral histories from them. I have their photographs all scanned, all their personal collections. I've had their assistance in helping me through the process. They love their former home, and they will help you in any way they can. And I did a living history program for 2003 to 2019, and we interpreted the Muse family, and that was the children that were in that photograph that gave me back all the furnishings. They told us their life stories. We had interpreters telling their life stories, which was like something that was so widely, received in such a positive manner. This past year, we had the return of the keepers. So I had those former keepers who never thought they were going to come home again, living in the island, in the keeper's dwelling, and they were there to provide tours and tell their stories to the public and came ashore. So that was very cool, and they loved it, and they want to come back. So Fred's Place was a good place to find them, and then once you find one, you say who was before you, who was after you. And when they can tell you that, then you go to the next one, who was before you, who was after you, until you finally get your list. Jeremy D'Entremont is a kind of historian, a lighthouse historian. He has done a lot of research, so he has a website that's pretty thorough, so you might want to check on that too. Anyhow, newspapers, et cetera, lighthouse organizations, you have them right here in town. American Lighthouse Foundation, ALF, Bob Trapani is the executive director. He's also still works for the Coast Guard too. Other lighthouse owners and the U.S. Lighthouse Society, they're on the West Coast, but they're helpful that they have a good archive and a good website too with lots of information. So there's where you got to do some research. All right, back to my first one. So you want to own a lighthouse. So do your research. We got the island factor. You got to have a master plan, and you got to form an A team. And one of your questions to me was, how many people are on your board, and what kind of leadership, okay? I obviously knew the most about it. I was the passionate one. I was the one boots on the ground there for 23 years. So I was the leader. And you need a leader instead of many. You also, my suggestion, our board started out with 5 people. We are up to 12 people at one time. Whew, too many people. When you have a big board, you have to have them all convened for meetings. You can't get your meetings. You can't get anything done because you got to get so many votes, and keep it simple, okay? So you can have advisory committees to help, but your actual board of directors, 5, 6, 7, or you're supposed to have an odd number, 5 or 7. I wouldn't go over 7 so that you can get something done. Also try to get local people. So that it's not people like, I've got a summer person, a couple of summer people, but it's hard because they're away. So with Zoom now, it's a little bit easier, but that's more difficult. Befriend those former keepers. Find volunteers. I'll go through a page here in my documents I gave you on the different volunteers that I've used, but volunteers saved hundreds of thousands of dollars for Burnt Island. You got to locate that money, and you got to be resourceful. So my last category was persistent. Enthusiasm is contagious. You don't know how many people tell me that, or have told me that. Enthusiasm is contagious. When you have somebody excited about something, others want to follow and help. If it's a winning project, they want to be on that team. So remember to have enthusiastic people as your spokespeople, because you got to ask for money, okay? A lot of people don't like to do that, but you've got to be able to find somebody who can. Family involvement. My loving husband and 3 children know how to work. Because as you know, the Conover family, whole family has been involved, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Maintain a positive attitude. We will get through this. Write some grants. Lighthouses are sexy. People love lighthouses, okay? So if you have a good project going, you're gonna get people who are gonna give you the money. So, and meet those generous people and also be generous to them. I have one major donor that, I made a Christmas wreath every year. I send him a Christmas wreath that handmade. I took him out to dinner last summer while they were here. You have to continue to be appreciative, and they continue to support you, which is wonderful. It's a noble effort, remember that. It's a noble effort. You're saving a historic site. And it's also a legacy, so keep that in mind. All right, any questions so far? All is quiet. I know,
I'm curious about the timeline for doing all this. You go back to 2000, early 2000,
yes,
progressively
yes,
start snowballing.
yes.
So when did the hardware store?
Okay, so the beginnings were, how do you make this house livable? No water, no septic, okay? Electricity was still there, but it was an old submarine cable that came up on the beach, okay? So I convinced the Coast Guard they had to move that submarine cable because it's right on the beach. And so we've put a trench through the island in order to put all the utilities through there. But we also, what we did is we put a water line under the ocean from Capitol Island 2,000 feet to Burnt Island. So with the water line, I always have a good source, for the people staying there. And I had school groups, teacher courses, summer camps, field trips for schools on in spring and fall, so we needed water. And so, knock on wood, it's been in the water since 1999. It's been hopefully buried well in the mud. And again, I have the whole design for that with cement blocks that ensleeve the water line, 4-inch water line, no, 1.5-inch water line that's below. And then as it goes through the intertidal zone, I have 4-inch PVC that shrouds the 1.5-inch line, okay? So now let's keep going. Once I got water, I got septic. I brought in like 300 yards of gravel and put in a sand filter bed. I had to deal with the roof, a leaky roof, okay? Had to deal with the asbestos and the lead paint. Those were all those initial things before I could open to the public. So like yourselves, I acquired Burnt Island in 1998 as part of that Maine Lights program. It was 2003 that I could open the doors to the public, with the downstairs being all I'm going to say restored. It was. I mean, it had new chimneys, a new fireplace, and so we tried to restore it the best that we could. But it took until the big push, which was, as you can see here, with this community support for Burnt Island. We started in like 2016 saying, okay, we want to get this project done for 2021, and that's the bicentennial year. And so that was our goal. Now we got to push, okay? And how are we going to do that? And so I've written down here from 2016 all the way to 19 that we finally raised about $400,000, which more came in. We had about $500,000 when we started the project. And we don't have a lot left, but as I said, cost overruns happen, and we all understand that. But just some of the things, some of my early kickoffs were, I had a beer brewed in town. He called it 10 Lewis Ale. There were Lewis lamps that were once in Burnt Island. I said, can you do a Burnt Island light beer? I thought, oh, this would be really cool. And he goes, no, light beers are no good. We're going to need IPAs. I said, okay, I don't care what you use. Just can we do a Burnt Island beer? And so it became named as 10 Lewis Ale. So it was a local microbrewery. We had an art auction. I made $33,000. Okay, that was my starting point. That was like, that's a big fundraiser. I had 22 artists, I think, come out to Burnt Island. I offered 2 weekends for them to be able to come out and paint. They had to donate 2 paintings, all framed and ready to go. And then we were fortunate at the Spruce Point Inn, which is a really fine resort right across, looks over at Burnt Island. They sponsored the auction site at no cost, along with some food and drinks, and we were able to bring in $33,000 that night. Again, evening socials, other places they wanted to do something. I had a lobsterman, Let's Go Lobstering. He says, I'm gonna donate my money to Burnt Island for 1 day of Let's Go Lobstering. So look, I brought in $850 that day. So they come to you. Oh, we can help, we can do this, but you gotta keep it in the news. You gotta keep it in your local papers so that people are aware of what your needs are. Always do an annual appeal. And I always did it between Thanksgiving and the first couple weeks of December, because that's at the end of the year. If people have to give money, that's when they need to get rid of money before they have to pay taxes on it. So get that out there. How did I get addresses? Okay, Booth Bay, like Camden, lots of summer people, okay? So you got to get those addresses of those people who are waterfront owners who have a lot of money. So I went to the town office, and I sent other volunteers as well, to Booth Bay, Southport, and Booth Bay Harbor. And we looked at the tax records, and anybody over $500,000 valuation, their name went down on our list. And so we did a mega mailing of like 4,000. We reached out to 4,000 summer residents, or people in town too, you know. But that's how we started our first mailing list, is let's go find out who the people are in town that have money.
How did you do on that?
We did well, but we also continued to maintain relationships with them, and sometimes they would share with us their email so that we could keep a closer contact, you know, through an email drop to them.
Where does that show up on your fundraising?
That's the community support. I have partnerships and fundraising on the other page, but I'm kind of on that first community support area, where, and I think somewhere here I put go to your town office. I don't know, maybe not. But anyhow, I'm telling you, that worked. Here's, again, you can see dinners at places. I did a pancake paddle-in. Every Sunday, people paddled in to Burn Island for pancakes, okay? And I had Wyman's donate all the blueberries, and I had, you know, other places donate things. You know, Hannaford's donated the pancake mix in the boxes, and so they paddled in and they gave us $25, and they had pancakes with us. And you have a really short distance there, so it'd be easier because we had some foggy mornings some of those times. This 2018 at Hendricks Head, this is a privately owned lighthouse by the Russell family, and nobody gets to go there, all right? And so I asked them, can we do an evening social here? And I set up a tent there, and I had interpreters so they could visit their lighthouse and interpret Hendricks Head's history. And we did quite well that night. We made $12,500. Okay, so I think it was $75 a head that we charged for them to come. And we did some, a lot of local people will donate, and you can do door prizes, so it's always fun. Had a school in Elliott, Maine. They contacted me. We want to raise money to help you. Okay, let's go. So they raised $22.25 for me. So here's a funny thing that I did, and it hasn't been too fruitful, but I think it's always just in the wrong place. We have a lighthouse model called Bernie, and Bernie the Giving Light. And so my son put a dollar bill acceptor into it, and then the light flashes and the horn blows depending upon how much money you put into Bernie. But it's a great idea. The town wouldn't let us put it in the town square, so that was where the best exposure was. So we had it outside the Emporium, which is a gift shop, but it just wasn't in the right place. But again, I'm trying every avenue I can to get people's dollars. So those are this community support, community events. Like I said, we do a lot of tours. I don't know if you guys do tours out there in any organized fashion, or if it's just people coming ashore.
There hasn't been any organized tours, except for Main Sport has kayak tours that go out.
Okay. I think we're getting this year, how much, $35 a head to come out to Burn Island for an adult. Again, it was a boat ride out. They spent 2 hours. They got to visit with the keepers, and they got to tour the buildings. But they pay it, you know, and people are here on vacation. So if you can organize some way to have some tours on a regular basis, it's educational, entertaining, they'll love it. So anyhow, the next page here goes through, again, more of the tours, the chamber, after hours, just getting things out. Weddings, okay, a little bit difficult on an island, but I've had a few. Memorial services, I've had those too. And open houses, Fisherman's Festival and the Maine Lighthouse Day, we always have open houses. Okay, let's go to some volunteers, all right? I started out going to a master gardener group, okay? It's been that long. The University of Maine Extension Service has master gardener classes. And so once they train these gardeners, then they've got to do public service. They have to volunteer. And so when I hooked on to them, then I'd get like 5 or 6 to start. And then I'd say, do you have a husband that can come and help too? Or do you have, whatever? And so it just started to accumulate. We got beyond having to be a master gardener, but we did a set every other Monday from 9 to noon. And when we set that as a permanent schedule, then we were able to get, handymen to come as well, and people to do the lawns and do the weed whacking, and so it ended up beyond gardening. It was like cleanup days every other Monday, and that worked pretty well. The Coast Guard has helped. I don't know if they've helped you at all, but...
Peter, have they been involved with you at all? Why don't you turn your,
No.
No.
No, as far as, no, not really.
Okay, Coast Guard's done a lot for me. From moving that submarine cable, no cost, okay? From stripping that thorough seal off the tower. I said, you guys put this here. I said, you need to come take it off. They sent a crew out, they stripped that down. I didn't have to pay a contractor for that. They've helped me, gosh, how many other ways? But they've been great. They also have to do public service. And what better place for them to come back to a site that is part of their heritage, okay? Their organization's heritage. And so I would tap into them. They're not always working, going out on boats, and they can spare a person or two every once in a while to come. So Coast Guard Auxiliary, okay, these are more the retired guys that are out there in their boats. They've all been helpful to me too. We have windjammer days. A Navy boat came ashore. Hey, I need some Navy guys. Can they come out and help on Bird Island for the day? Sure enough, so they came out. All right, here's a good one, guys. Number 5, the Lincoln County inmates and the sheriff. Free labor, all right? They come out, schedule it. I always put burgers on the grill. I fed them well so that when they ask for volunteers to go out the next week, they come back. They were really helpful. Landmark volunteers are high school kids. I would not go there. Those were the longest 2 weeks of my life, but they helped. Our bureau director at one point was very helpful, Linda Mercer, and she would allow the staff to come out and help too. Those former keepers of those listed there were very, very helpful to me. The high school does community service days. Again, the logistics of getting them out on an island and then back within a school day period of time, they were only out there a couple hours. So, adult education, I was at least able to do presentations, and I was able to, bring people into a room, into an auditorium where I could sell my programs, and got the help there. Cleanup weekends. Again, locals, teachers who have come out and taken courses with me, they're all passionate and fallen in love with Bourne Island, so they all are willing to come back. And local residents, they do want to help their own local lighthouse. So you got to ask, okay? That's the biggest thing. If you don't ask, you don't get. So you got to have somebody out there making sure you get people to be involved as volunteers, or if they don't have the money, can you come out and help us physically? And you get them. Okay, partnerships on the next page and funding. These are just different groups that I kind of partnered with over time. Again, the Coast Guard, you can see the different things that they did there for me. Fish and Wildlife funded my position for the state. Bureau of General Services, which is a state, they provided me with 15 grand to take off the asbestos and lead paint in the tower. Outdoor Heritage Fund is a special scratch ticket for a lottery, and There are a lot of state organizations, but you can put it through, somebody had a Fish and Wildlife Service, had a Inland Fisheries and Wildlife hat. Are you associated with them? Okay, but you don't work for them?
No.
Okay. Well, they are major partners in this Outdoor Heritage Fund. And so they will accept outside grants, okay, from people. Chamber, Lighthouse Society was a group that was originally there. Master Gardeners, I hit AmeriCorps. Again, these are more like college kids just finishing up. I wouldn't let them like stay too long without supervision. They're still only 22 years old, but they were good workers while they were there. Got Boy Scouts out there doing some projects, the teachers, as I mentioned, community members. Okay, so I got all of those. All right, where did my money come from? Oh, I did an education center, which was there at the bottom, which shows some of the big money. I know MBNA is gone now. I know Charlie Colley is no longer on earth. He was very, very generous to this community. Does anybody know if Julie, his wife, is she alive? She passed away too? And the house, do the kids still come? Is that sold? The kids are around? The son is around? Okay, they do have a Colley Family Foundation, okay? So they loved Camden, obviously. So I would make sure you look into the Colley Family Foundation. And these were foundations that kind of helped us, and a lot of them were local foundations, local people. Okay, so let me show you what makes money for you. All right, I'm sorry, I taped some of these up, and I probably did something wrong by doing it. I don't know if you will share these. Getting the word out, we'll share it with her afterwards, getting the word out to people and showing them your needs. So I did this right when we were ready. You guys can share. You guys can share. This was a mailer, and if you can open up undo that tape that's holding the top and bottom, because I do have a little insert in there. You always put a donation envelope. And I also at one point had a photographer who did an aerial of Burnt Island, and we said if you give so much money, $25 or more, you'll get a copy, a high resolution picture of this for your own personal use. So those types of things are appealing, and people will tend to donate. But look at the needs. If you got that and say, oh yeah, they need help, okay? And that's when you get your money. I was fortunate to get one really good donor, all right, which ended up $220,000 from one person. That makes a huge difference. Again, if there is people, and there are people here in this community, even a matching grant, if they're willing, like Charlie Colley for MBNA grant, he said to me, I'll give you $150,000, but you got to raise $150,000. But as a matching grant, you go, hey, dollar for dollar, I raised $170,000, all right? So it's all doable, and you got to start now, start soon, because you've got to form your timeline as to when you're going to start your restoration work, and know what the needs are. Any questions? Yes?
What do you use for a boat?
Well,
Transportation?
okay. I worked for the Department of Marine Resources. I've been told I'm one of the most resourceful people on earth. I got word that the Department of DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, had a lobster boat, a 28-foot lobster boat, Weber's Cove, going to auction. They were getting rid of it. Had less than 1,000 hours on a diesel engine, however, it sunk, okay, went down once because of ice buildup and they had it in the water. I ended up getting that boat for free. Well, it isn't always free because you always have boats or holes in the water you keep throwing money into, but it was a very good platform because I could haul lumber, I could haul materials, I could haul people, and that was my major form of transportation. When we had groups out that I wasn't going to take, you know, like the teacher groups or the school kids or whatever, we have a local water taxi that would drop them off. And then if we really needed, we hired the barge. $750 for a trip out to Burn Island. But we had a mile to go versus yours. So what you need on your island, and I don't know if you have any machinery or any other ways to move materials, because I know your landing site seems to be facing the harbor, and you have a swatch, looks like cut through. How do you get your stuff from point A to point B?
There's a tractor,
There is a tractor.
yeah.
Okay, that's really important. I have to share with you just some of the, another thing that
I
brought
asked,
to my mind.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Is there a dock at Burn Island?
Yes, we put
Okay.
in a float system.
Float system?
Yeah, it's not good, okay?
Like-
It needs dolphins, it needs posts to
Yep.
secure it. It's horrible because the surge is awful. It's on the lee of the island,
Mm-hmm.
but it is the only place that could allow for access.
Okay.
And there was once an old wharf there in the early illustrations of the island's plot plan.
Curtis Island is a very challenging site,
It is,
to say the least.
okay.
There's no easy access, let's just say that. So we've talked about, we don't need to get into the weeds with this, but we're starting to talk about like putting in a temporary like float system
Yeah.
that can be taken out in the
Yeah,
wintertime.
Yep.
Just for the work and restoration. That's, I think, is going to be one of a big challenge here as far as getting groups. And sounds like you had easier access than Curtis Island.
well, it's not easy because
No, right.
we have a gut that goes between Burnt and Mouse Island, and as you, at least you're in the harbor, and there's, the wakes aren't so big, but we've got those huge tour boats that are going right by, and that just comes right in and just torques. I mean, we've got chains that are down and blocks that are down on it, but it needs dolphins, it needs posts. And I got Proc Marine to come out, it's $15,000 a post, it was gonna be 3 posts to get there, to get a secure system in place, but that's what it needs.
Question.
Yeah.
Is that your intention then to have a permanent dock system for public access?
The 4-float system that we have right now is what we've been using since 2000, till 1999. We put the first float in, expanded that to 4 floats. That's all we have. We have 3 moorings.
So
And
what type of people are visiting? People on, with the dinghies, they bring their dinghy to the dock? Is that-
Or if there's front space, you know, the inside space are for the keepers to have their place for their boats, but the outside space, yeah, people who can tie up.
Yeah.
I mean, we have like rules and regulations, no rafting, you know, 2-hour limit, you know, those types of things. But that's the public, I mean, people paddle ashore. We've got a great beach
Yeah.
area, and that's fine. But anybody with recreational boats, they all come by use the float system.
So you don't have any concern about getting overuse, but there's only limitation how many people can dock there at one time?
Yeah, there's only like 3 people can dock on the front face. Yeah, and we say no boats over 20 feet in length, all right? Go use the moorings to try.
One more question.
Sure.
So could you elaborate, I don't think this is in your report, but maybe elaborate more on how it is actually used today? How is the facility used? Is it used for group visits? Is it used for overnight stays? Maybe more about how it actually is used.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've had pre-COVID, COVID, and now post-COVID, okay? So we've had 3 different phases in the last few years. Originally, starting 2003 was a living history program with the interpretation, and we started every day of a week, and 2 trips a day when we first started. We only ended up getting 15, 20 people a trip. Okay, that wasn't going to work. So we ended up going Mondays and Thursdays instead, 1 trip, and we fill up 40, 50 people, okay, on those trips. That brings in the money. We have to obviously give some to the water taxi, but that brings in revenue. We have a gift shop. I tell you what, gift shops make a lot of money, all right? And even if you had any type of Curtis Island mugs, T-shirts, whatever, and ask the local people, could you please try to sell these or whatever, or something in the park, you're going to sell a lot.
So it's primarily a day usage type?
It is, except when I did teacher, and that's why I built the education center, and that was for teachers and school children and summer campers.
For day usage?
No, they can spend the overnight. I have 32 beds in 32 bunks, triple berths, and I have it, it's in the form of a life-saving station. It looks just like the Popham Beach Life Saving Station, so I kept in the maritime theme. And upstairs are 2 dormitories, and within those dormitories, there's a total of 32 beds. So I can sleep a lot of people there. But it is the tours for the public, and then it's open 7 days a week from 10 to 5. So we set some hours so that we could run our tractor from 8 to 10 and not have to worry about running over some little kids running down the path. And so, I mean, the biggest thing is, as you know, I'm sure your family knows, even though we set hours, even though we put a little rope across the walkway, you know, we see lots of people coming on anyhow. And our biggest thing is you gotta have somebody there 24/7 living there. If you don't, things happen. And just this past summer was an example. We had one keeper who had left, the next keeper was delayed in coming. I came ashore on that Monday to help with the tours, and 2 ladies came down and said, "We just put out a fire," okay? Oh, my heart, okay? Just put out a fire after all of that work. I said, "Where?" And they said, "Next to the public restrooms." So what somebody did is they took a cigarette and they put it in a hole in the ground, thinking it was dirt. Well, that hole in the ground was filled with leaves and pine needles and all of that stuff, so we had an underground fire start. So if there's nobody there, that fire could have consumed the entire island. And there is no fire protection other than hoses. You know, nobody's gonna come, it's gonna go. So fire is a scary thing. I started to talk about your tractor. Funny story. Ben Stockbridge was one of my keepers on Bird Island. Was also a Curtis Island keeper for 1 year, 1950-51. He was there. I found family relatives. They came. This lady came from, I think, Massachusetts. Old Ben Stockbridge. He's a Camden Curtis Island Pictures. He had an old tractor that he had out there. Where's another one? He's got another good one of this tractor that would help him move things from point A to point B on Curtis Island. I guess this is it, another one of the tractors. So you need to have equipment to help you out. It's a lot of work. This is him. He was there with the pea pod here. Oh no, that was at Mark Island. He was here with a pea pod coming into Curtis Island. I think this is Curtis. Yeah, this is Curtis Island too. 1950.
Curtis Island.
Yeah, that's yours. This is Marjorie Bates, which is his niece, sent these pictures to me. He didn't have any children. He was deceased. So you can get, once you find families, you get things like this that are like treasure. So anyhow, that's.
Did you have a question?
Yes.
Did the Island Institute have anything to do with it all?
The Island Institute was involved with the Maine Lights program, which was the transfer process. After that, a bunch of us as stewards of the light, Peter Ralston was still working for the Island Institute at that time, and he headed up and we started an organization, a nonprofit called Maine Lights. It didn't take off, and I'll tell you why. All of us were looking for money. All of us were looking for help. And it was like the pie was just this big. And so why would I work to help, Ram Island Light when I need the help, when I found a source or a volunteer or money? And so it didn't take off as a group, a nonprofit for that purpose. The Keepers of the Bird Island Light worked. As you asked me, any issues? Okay, I sent you in your packet this one, which is called a Memorandum of Agreement between the department and the Keepers of Bird Island Light. So you have to have some kind of legal standing, and so it's not a lease, but it's an agreement. There are other, like the Friends of Fort Knox, okay? Fort Knox is owned by another state organization, and so they actually have a lease. They have a lot more flexibility. They call the shots. They meet with the department twice a year, and that's it. They call the shots, and they organize everything that they need to get done out there. I'm sure they have to get SHPO approval if they have to do anything like that. But this at least gives, in the partnership, what you're responsible for, what we're responsible for, and what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. So it kind of gives you an idea of this document that we have that kind of binds us. We have found, unfortunately, over time, that the keepers are starting to feel like basically they're doing it all and not getting the support, where we'll say, we're going to do a work weekend. Anybody in the DMR staff want to come out and help? No. Okay, it's a weekend. So the partnership is strained. It can be strained at times. We have some money. They want all our money. We want to be able to say what we feel are improvements that need to be done. And so there's this control thing that goes on unless, again, it all depends on who the players are. And all I have to say is communication is really key, is being able to keep the door open between organizations and having two lead people, one person in the town to go to, one person in your nonprofit to go to. And they're the spokespeople that communicate and set the schedule. That seems to work better. Okay.
So you would submit work plans every year? This is what we're planning to spend our money on?
Correct.
For your owned
property.
property.
Right. And then we also talk to them about what do you feel the needs are? Okay, and I'm saying we, but again, I'm no longer part of the Keepers of Burn Island Light. I've veered off. I started my own nonprofit called Lighthouse Education and Nautical Studies, which has the acronym of LENS. And so I'm here today wearing my LENS hat to help you. But I'm trying to, again, continue to educate the public and sponsor the local school children to get out and use Burn Island. When I say we, I'm really not part of the organization anymore, but I'm telling you what my experiences were. I felt that I knew the needs more than they knew the needs because I'm the one that's there, where I was there, okay? I'm the one that wrote the proposal, and this next set of papers in your packet is the restoration proposal. So this had to go to the SHPO, and this had to go to the State Bureau of General Services that oversees buildings, state buildings. And I don't know how the town of Camden handles things, but when you're in a government, there's a lot of hurdles, all right? You've got so much money that you can allow contractors before it has to go totally out to bid. You've got, special contracts that has to be put in place with insurances that are worth, or bonds, or all of this stuff, depending upon the complexity of the project and what the specific criteria the organization wants from you. So, however, this was my proposal to them so that they could see exactly what I outlined that I felt I needed to get done in all of the aspects of the restoration work. And I have appendices, but I couldn't get them printed off here today. But I can easily submit that to you, or like when you're ready to do this, just call me again, and I can help you out in that process. Yes?
So the amount of work you've done is impressive, and really amazing. And as the leader, the breadth of what you've done, I imagine it was just a huge commitment of time. Did this approach being a full-time job for you as leader? And were you or anyone else compensated for your time, or was it all volunteer? And as in the ongoing management, is it also all volunteer, or people compensated?
Okay, so I actually wore two major hats. I also was responsible for designing, building, and operating the Maine State Aquarium. I was given an empty building and no money in 1993. And I found a way to open this aquarium. And I continued to run that aquarium and run Burn Island. Now, when I had a really good staff person, I could spend more time on Burn Island. When I didn't have a really good staff person, I had to contract with, I have a really good teacher who we've teamed up, and so she could be out there. Now, when you do a contract with somebody like that, for the state requirement, we had to go through a job service. The job service was paying the workman's comp and liability. So whatever the base pay was, if it's $20 an hour, you really paid $22 an hour, okay? But the $2 went to the job service. And that's what the state accepted as having somebody out there. That person also had to have $1 million worth of insurance for liability for themselves, personal insurance. Which, again, for the person out there for 3 weeks, like I hired this one teacher for 3 weeks, I think it was $225 or something like that for that insurance. And I just built that into the cost of the contract. So, you know, that's that answer. As far as most of it was volunteer, my time was paid through a federal grant to the department. So my time was devoted to that. Yes, did I work an 8-hour day, a 40-hour week during the summer? No, it was 60 to 70 hours a week, I'm sure I put in. Because I'd get back from the aquarium at 5, I'd come on mow lawns till 9, all right? Or I'd do other things that have to be done out there. So I worked hard. I did a lot of work, but it's very rewarding. So your parents would never think twice about all the dedication that they did, right?
Right.
They enjoyed the procedure, the process, and the commitment. So you got to find that good person, and you asked me that question too. Where do you find that person? I don't know. I can't tell you that, all right? However, money helps. We do have somebody that the donor said to me, it's kind of looking a little shabby out here. Let me put $20,000 aside, but you need to have somebody out here cutting back the brush and making sure this looks a little bit better. And spraying for ticks, okay? So he gave me an extra 20 grand to do that for 3 years, okay? So with that said, we were able to accomplish, you know, through a paid staffer. Other than that, you've got groups like AmeriCorps, you still have a stipend, but your prisoners are free, okay? So all you gotta do is buy hamburger and rolls. And so if you can find sources like that, that's really helpful. But other than that, it was volunteer labor. Any other questions?
Because we're like at the very beginning stages of talking about, you know, what do we want the island to be and what do we think we should be doing? I have a feeling that our operation is going to be a totally different scale from what you're presenting. However, all of this information is really useful, but I'll be interested to see what we come up with in terms of what do we really want to do on the island?
Mm-hmm.
What do we want it to be? This is really helpful, but
Yeah.
I just, when you start talking AmeriCorps volunteers, and it's like, we need a plan.
Yeah, and a master plan, that was in there. You need a master plan. I'll follow up with one thing and then I'll come back to you.
I have a million questions.
Okay.
I'm gonna, being a contractor and my brain going towards like utilities and systems, did SHPO, so Curtis Island had, I don't think it's ever had water, right?
Well, it did at one point.
At one point,
What, a cistern or a pipeline, or a pipe?
maybe?
There was a well out there.
Okay.
So-
It's probably brackish and not
The
potable.
well is polluted. It
Yeah,
was,
or not potable.
yeah.
Does,
Yes.
does Burnt Island have a septic system?
Yes. We put in 3 septic tanks, 3 1,000-gallon tanks, 2 that went to the education center, 1 for the house. And we brought in 320 yards of gravel for a sand bed filter, raised. So the elevation of Burnt Island came up in a section.
If, if water does come back from the mainland, I know local, there's a lot of, my brain's going all over the place. Like they'll be required to have a septic system out there, so this is tricky. We have lots to figure out. as far as a group here. So, but I do think your point is, like, there's a lot of planning to do, and I think that Curtis Island is a fragile place. Like, it can only handle so much traffic. So I think it's just, everybody here in this group, it's important just to put that in your think tank. I totally applaud what you guys have done at Bird Island. They're all different, of course. It'll just be interesting to see what kind of things we have to do and what kind of, like, okay, I'm really curious to see, like, what date is this building and all the buildings get restored to? Are we going to go from the 50s? Just I'm kind of going all over the place here. So,
Yeah, I think that you'll end up knowing that when you do your research and find your best documentation.
okay.
And once you find those photographs, architectural drawings, and like I found the people who lived there in 1950,
Yep.
that's the period. Plus, it's easy to get that furniture of that date and not 1900. Okay, if you're going to restore it and make it look good to what a period it was, you can get 1950s for less money. Yes.
What was the total amount, you said what was the total amount you raised to do the project?
We raised $500,000.
And that was, I guess, percentage-wise, was that mainly spent on the actual lighthouse rather than, or
No.
how did you break that down?
No, the house was the more costly thing.
dwelling was the
Yeah,
more
the
costly.
dwelling was the most costly thing because we ended up with, new roofs, new siding, new windows, rotted sills, and so we kept getting cost overruns, and it was all with the house. The tower he was pretty good at. Jim Leslie, and his name is in that materials, he has had he's been sick, so I don't know where he is, his health-wise, but I think Bird Island was his 21st lighthouse that he's done. And so I received his name from the SHPO, that he was very knowledgeable in the construction of lighthouses. And so he and his crew came second week in June and left the last week of August. And they were able to stay on the island. They were from Berwick area, so they came Monday through Thursday. Yeah.
All right, this is a little bit of a tangent.
Sure.
Let me give you a microphone here.
No, I don't think you want a microphone.
There are other people
Oh,
outside listening.
So, unsavory question. You talked about people jumping the ropes. I'm curious how much of a concern is graffiti, teenagers going out to the island at night and doing things, and what would be the level of concern here in Camden for that? Is that something that, we would expect to happen out?
Yeah, I really didn't, I've seen broken into the donation boxes probably 4 times. And I would assume that was probably teenagers coming ashore. I have not seen graffiti, thank goodness. Again, I've had 2 fires, okay? Teenagers paddled ashore on the backside of the island to roast marshmallows. Yeah, that was fun. And let's see, the other question was, what was the other part to your question? Graffiti,
Should we worry about it here?
Should we
I was curious, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and you guys have, I would put cameras up too, because now there's so many game cameras or cameras that are available, and I would make it known, like I have in the window security system, and I do have a security system installed in the buildings. So if anybody does, and one time it happened, the group forgot to lock the front door, and it was a Saturday, and some tourists came ashore, and they found the door was open, they went in. Well, they were in there for about 30 seconds before the horn started blasting, and so we had, then I could call the harbor master, I could call the neighboring island, to respond.
Could you
So,
also spread rumors of like ghosts that come out at night? And,
Yeah. yeah, we have those too. So,
Peter, you guys have had some experience there.
Yeah, the rule for Curtis Island is, you can be out there from sunrise to sunset. And of course, there's people that don't see the sign or try to stay beyond sunset. And we've always asked them nicely that it is time to, go ashore. And, there's been little things that have come up with different things. But, my mom and dad were always there during the summer. And so they were, like you said, it's important to have someone on site so that if something does go wrong or someone needs help, their boat gets the tide goes out and they're left high and dry, or any number of things to help them out.
Yeah.
But as far as policing it, just being there and being a presence has been the best thing.
Yeah. I did go through the legislative process of having a bill passed to form rules and regulations that are law for Burn Island, and I can post those and say LD 295, blah, 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 to protect Burn Island.
That's scary.
Okay, but, when they see that, the rules are posted there. My source was Marine Patrol, which was part of the agency that I could call Marine Patrol, because they all have boats, and they can come out. I've only had one time that I had people stealing, and I approached two men. I only had one time I was freaked out. That was it, in 23 years, so, not too bad. Yes.
What- go ahead.
Sorry. Okay.
Mike, I have a quick question. Based on what you know about us here, what would you say would be our first step? I mean, you were the leader of your organization. We're at the very beginning stages here, but I mean, I would assume it would be to form a committee.
Yeah.
And have someone step up as leader. Is that what you would recommend?
Yeah, and the other part is forming a nonprofit. I gave Michael information about that it really isn't that costly to set up a nonprofit. You have to pay a lawyer to make sure that your bylaws are all correct, and et cetera, et cetera. But when you start asking for money, like I said, people are more apt to pay to donate to a nonprofit than they are to the town. So that was something I would set up, as soon as possible too, with an initial board of directors where they can get that ball rolling.
Burn Island's owned by the state of Maine. Curtis Island is owned by the town of Camden.
Correct.
So you brought up a really good point, and I think not one penny of tax dollars had to go towards, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
That's incredible.
And because you can say that, the wallets open up even more. Okay? And it's showing that, again, like a grassroots effort, you are so positioned to get that support. And it just takes, like I said, that one person who gave me the $220,000. He bid on one of the art pieces. He didn't stay because he had something else to do. He won the bid. I delivered it to his house, so I got to meet him. And then he came to the Hendricks Head event. And when he came, he approached me and he said, "I want to help you." And I said, "Okay." And then he's the one, and he said, "My children have nothing to want for." And then I started crying because I knew it was going to be good help. And he said, "I need to come over and see what your projects are going to be." And he goes, "I want nothing to do with the masonry. I'll fund the buildings." Okay. And he's been so generous, and it's been wonderful. So you never know. Where is that one person in a crowd, in an event that you're going to host, that's going to open up their wallet? You never know.
And can you talk about your relationship with Maine Historic Preservation and any either watch-outs or go-for-it or?
So the person responsible for lighthouses is Mike Johnson, and he's very easy to work with. He again is not just responsible for lighthouses. There's only Kirk, and Christie, and it might be another person, like 4 people within that agency. And so they have to do a lot of different things. But Mike usually responds back very quickly. He did come out to the island a couple of times. So I had a great relationship with them. I really had no issues with them because they knew I was doing things right, okay? They trusted by me showing them all my research and all the stuff that I had and the documentation that I had. They trusted I wasn't going to pull off something that wasn't historically correct. So it was a good relationship.
Did you guys have a historical architect involved?
Okay, so in one of the proposals here, which was interesting, the state told me I had to have somebody, and I pulled in this guy, Scott Hansen, with Sutherland Conservation and Consulting, okay? And I started talking to him because he was said, I'm only going to come out once or twice. And I said, well, that's not good enough, you know? And I approached the state and said, look, I'm there on the spot. I know everything about what this project is. Can we nix that $6,000 and let me be the project manager? And they said, yep, that's a good idea. So I became the project manager. And I'm the one that wrote everything in this report. So, yep.
So the answer was the historical architect
Wasn't involved.
wasn't involved, okay.
I had all things approved by SHPO, and they were good
Okay.
with that. Yes.
And Maine Preservation, which is different than the commission, they often have services that they offer, consulting services for historical projects. So did you go to them at all?
Okay, so here's a funny story. Maine Preservation is the ones that sell the, no, that's a Maine Lighthouse Trust. Okay, Maine Preservation, we did receive the award for this, but we've not received any funding from them. But there's a Maine Lighthouse Trust, which is just established for the lighthouse plates that are going out there, and they will give a small grant every year.
I wasn't thinking about grant, I was thinking about architectural
Oh, architectural
consulting.
assisting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you find somebody in town that will do it, you know, pro bono, that's a possibility that you can find somebody, you know, that can help you out in that respect. Like when I brought my first group of contractors out there, I brought a general contractor out, and he wrote up the report and all. I said, okay, send me your invoice. He said, no. He said, it's my gift to Burnt Island. And you're gonna see people are generous that way. So, yep. Yes.
Sorry about all the
No,
questions.
no, please, that's why I'm here.
I'm curious, with all the traffic we get in the harbor, is some kind of a Curtis Island restoration fee something that could ever be looked at, or is there any, legal hurdles for that? Is that something that could be a source of funding for restoration projects?
Are you talking about going through local businesses, or?
No, I don't know how the harbor fees are done here, but is that, what's that? Exactly, like some kind of additional fees for
Yes.
boats moving through the harbor, or docking, or what have you.
I don't know, Chris.
Online processing that Lyman Morse uses to reserve moorings.
I know, but I also want you to know Venmo, okay? So if you put up your little sign about donations, people who come ashore don't have money, but they have their phones. And a lot of the younger huh?
Huge sign, donate here,
Venmo.
Great.
And they buy in the gift shop, Venmo, okay? So really, make sure you get that as part of your, and also you can get a Venmo QR code too, so you can put that on your newsletters or anything else. Oh, Maine Philanthropy Center. Geez, I have the things sitting right here in front of me. Okay, the Maine Philanthropy Center is out of the University of Maine, at Southern Maine in Portland. It's the Osher Library is where the Maine Philanthropy Center has their offices. They have a software where you can query anything you want, and it will spit out all the donors. And you can query, like, these are all Maine contributors. These are all Maine foundations and Maine, businesses or whatever. And this is only one. I've got another one of this thickness, and this I queried education and historical preservation, and these are the ones that will give towards that. And so you pay a $75 membership fee for the year. They have things online as well, but I went for a day and I just queried, and I sent all that data to my email. So once I queried, I got in a spreadsheet and an Excel sheet, and then I just said, zip, it's going to my email. So when I got home, then I had it all. So I would suggest Maine Philanthropy
What
Center.
was the name of that library?
It's the Osher Library, Osher.
That's the map
Yes, a map library, but they have their office space there.
Now, Elaine, Bird Island has, okay, Curtis Island has 4 structures.
Okay.
Did you guys, how many structures does Bird Island have, and did you do them all in this mobilization?
Yes, well, the only one that didn't need anything was the oil house. We did a little bit of repointing in a couple of places the mason did around the foundation area.
Did you keep it white or red?
Oh, no, I took that white paint off. I did that that thorough seal. That peel away. Yeah, we
away.
took all the white paint off from it. So we have, the tower has a little workroom attached to it. The covered walkway connects the tower workroom to the house. We have a shed, a work shed. We have a boathouse, and we rebuilt a coal bunker that was next to the boathouse. So those are the 6 structures that are historic that are there. Well, the bunker is rebuilt. So everything that needed work, like the boathouse, we put a new roof on it.
Got it.
Siding was okay.
Okay.
Okay. The shed had, when the clapboards came off, the old pine clapboards, the old shingles were there, the shakes were there. So we had somebody, part of our contract was scrape them, because SHPO said, please keep as much as you can. That's still historic. The windows had some fancy filigree around the, awnings around the windows, so they removed those, and they cleaned them up and secured them and put them back up. So whatever could still be used, the historic materials that were usable, if they weren't usable, they understood. If it's rotted, you got to replace it. But you try to do it as best you can.
Some of the recent research I've been doing on it, I found, I think it was maybe 1911, and it was a Coast Guard memorandum, and it described what was on the island. They had a 130-foot floating dock system out where, where the outhauls are. I'm not sure where. And there was a boathouse there. Do you know where that was? Was that up on the bank?
I think it was up on the bank. Where you're going from the out hall up
Yeah.
the steps, to the left, you can see there's some relics of something that was there, and I think that's where it was.
Okay, so that was there. Then there was also a wooden covered connector between the house and the light.
Yeah, that was very popular, the covered walkway.
And there was a whole set of, looked like outhouses, just off the main porch when you come in. Where the garden is, where all the pretty flowers are.
Oh, yeah.
I think I have a few pictures in my files that are aerials of what it looked like in the 50s. I think I have a couple pictures. But I am going back to Washington this winter because I started to write a book about Bird Island, because I'm probably the only person on earth that knows this much about Bird Island. And so I figured that's my duty to get it all down. And so I've got to go back to the archives anyhow. And I can take a peek, or you can go online and see what they might have. But again, the other place I've got to go back to also is the Civil Engineering Unit in Providence. And I can look at Curtis and see what's in the files there too, as I do. And send that your way. But
What'd you do? So it was a 5-year project?
our raising money was from like 16 to 19 was our concerted effort to, okay, everybody, and again, we had a theme, keep the light burning, so anything that's catchy, and your marketing strategies on how you can, haul in people, it works.
2-year construction?
No, it was 2020, and what ended up happening is because of project overruns, the schedule for the carpenter was supposed to leave the end of August, and he didn't leave till mid-October. And at that point, our water gets turned off because we have seasonal water from April 15th or May 1st guaranteed to middle of October. So I had to go back in 2021. I was retired, but I went back because I needed to do a big bicentennial celebration. And I recruited volunteers to help me, and we painted the whole interior because that didn't get done. because every window was replaced. So every room had white strips around the windows. So every room in that house needed to be painted.
And during the construction time, did you have signs up there just as people would access, say there's construction, this is an active construction? I guess, did you handle that?
Yep, I got that storm webbing and like gating, okay? Yeah, and so I gated off like 100 feet away from all of the buildings that were under construction and, or ropes and signs and said, you know, construction zone, do not enter.
Right, okay.
Most people were pretty good about that. Because you still have to give them a place where they can take a picture.
Well, and if
Of the
they wanna-
tower.
they're trying to raise money too, so.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
So, but, yeah, there's lots of logistics involved, but it all happened, it was all at once, 2020.
Okay,
Yep,
nice.
so.
Amazing story.
We're gonna have to duck out too, but thank you
Yeah,
so much for everything.
okay. And Michael can give you my email address, or I can give it to you now if you want to write it down. If you have questions that you want to send to me, it's Lightkeeper, but it's Lite, because the other one is taken. Litekeeper, Lightkeeper, at tds.TomDavidSam.net. Eileen Jones.
Well, thank you so much. Now,
Well, you're welcome.
what we've agreed to here, you'll stay a little longer if there are any questions, but folks are
That have to scoot.
comfortable leaving now, and I
And
think this
Charlie's
is-
generation, you need to start recruiting them.
That's why he's here.
And again, thank you very, very
Oh,
much.
you're very welcome.
This gives a lot of inspiration for what
All
we're
right,
doing.
I turned my mic off. Good.
What has happened with in Rockland, the Lighthouse Museum? Is that still Blackwood or whatever his name was?
Yeah, Ken Black passed away, and then his wife was supposed to be instrumental in keeping it going, Dottie Black. I don't know, I know she's alive, so I don't know what extent, but I think it's the American Lighthouse Foundation that's really responsible for it. I went a couple of years ago, and I did walk through, it's still there. I think the gift shop area got transferred to another group of people.
Because they were in the Ritz-Nell.
Hey, Rhonda.
Right.
Thanks for
And then
coming.
they went over with what's his name.
And this is Chris. Did you meet Rhonda last time at our last historic resources meeting?
I don't know yet. I hope so.
He was at the meeting with the lights. She's on the historic resources meeting. And Chris goes, did you apply already?
He used to run one of the
Not
books.
yet. To be on all of those.
He's gonna be coming to Winchester.
Unless this turns out.
And he has this big museum.
Where do I apply? It's in the town.
Maybe the
Yeah.
Lighthouse.
Just at the, near Audra's office. But this thing I wanted to talk to both of you about is, what I've been teasing you about on the phone.
All right, I am a talker, as you see, so
History of this, the deep history of the
be
life.
aware. And not too bad, I told him.
It needs to be.
I didn't want an hour, he said an hour and a half is it,
I just
and
thought-
okay.
Little and Negro out
Look at the
there.
clock, I'm there.
Never seen.
I took the volunteer work too, when you have volunteers, you always have like a disclaimer, so I have this, I'll leave it with them.
Tackle, jointly, individually, or shop.
You do too, right?
You know what, I was
Yeah, I
biology.
didn't know
I
it.
never liked history, and when I got this project, it was fine.
This is such a historical community.
And I can now appreciate architecture, and now appreciate other things that I never before. I was science. I was
Trained researchers other than
But when he went after his own house, we could see.
I don't think so.
So anyway, we'll be in touch about it, but be thinking about it.
Okay. All right.
Nice to meet you. Where do you live, Ron?
In our tours, Main Street,